Tiny is pretty excited about today. We are finally getting all of the winter hay delivered. I had initially planned to put all these little squares in the barn, but the horses have been going through it so quickly that I'm just going to leave it on the trailer until I feed it all. I am extremely lucky that my hay guy just comes and delivers all of my big giant bales for me. The hay that I get for the winter is typically a second cutting straight alfalfa. Because it does get so extremely cold in Montana, I like to have the added calories of the alfalfa. This stuff is always a good combination of leafy green and thicker stems, so it does take the horses a little bit longer to eat. If I were to feed straight grass hay, these horses would lose way too much weight over the winter, so this is just easier for where I live and the environment that the horses are staying out in. Here is what it looks like close up. It does have quite a bit of leaves on it, which will be perfect for Nigel and Frisco Bill. This bale got a little bit weird while they were moving it, so I'm going to give Nigel a little bit of a snack in his shelter. Even though Nigel and Frisco are missing a bunch of teeth, they typically can shake out this hay and eat the leaves with no problem. This is actually way better than the chopped hay that I've been getting for Frisco Bill. It's much easier to get all of the most nutritious parts of the hay. I did get a little bit more of the extra hay. I'm going to feed some to Frisco Bill.
Bill, want some hay, buddy?
While he probably won't be able to eat the stems, he definitely will be able to eat the leaves. And then when he's done, I'll just rake up all of the stems that are left over, and Prim will probably get those.
Okay, old boy.
I've noticed that Frisco has been a little bit down lately. I would like to get some more weight on him before winter.
You all right,
I don't
buddy?
know if he's just feeling his age a lot more these days, or if maybe he would do better with some more turnout, but I'm going to try a few things before the winter comes.
Put it right here for you, buddy. Go, Zig.
Ziggy has been enjoying his time out in his tiny little pasture. I have put him out with Scarlet a few more times, but he grew pretty tired of her nonsense very quickly. It did take a few loads, but I finally got all of the hay that I need for the winter. And it also looks like Ziggy definitely approves of this hay. This should help him gain a little bit more muscle mass along his top line. We also discovered that Ziggy will need to have one of his teeth pulled, so he's going to go back to the vet in a couple of weeks. But this hay will help make sure that he does not lose too much weight over the winter. These big square bales are a pretty typical way to get hay in Montana, especially if you have a lot of horses. These guys weigh between 1,600 and 1,800 pounds. Last year I bought 50 bales to get me through the winter, and this year I bought 4 extra. That comes to roughly 50 ton of hay for all of the horses. Sometimes it can be really hard to calculate how much hay I'm going to use for the winter, especially because I don't know exactly how cold it's going to get. When it dips down to 40 or 50 below, that's when I can go through a ton of hay really quickly.
I'm coming.
I'm excited to put Scarlet back on some of this alfalfa. She is still actively growing. One thing about feeding alfalfa to young horses is you do have to be very careful because of the calcium to phosphorus ratio. There's a lot of calcium in alfalfa, and it can make a growing horse get some developmental problems if you're not careful. It is actually a gorgeous day out today. It's pretty warm, and I caught little Gus snoring. He was in a very deep sleep. Stewie was also taking a little nap, and although Pete wasn't laying down, he was napping as well. Since I started feeding the grass, hay, and pretty much all of the pasture is gone, I did notice that Pete, Whiplash, and Big Gus have been losing a little bit of weight. Most of the other horses could sustain themselves on the lower protein grass hay, but coming into winter, I do like the horses to be a little bit on the plump side. The grass hay that I've been feeding is only about, I think it's 5 or 6% protein, so very, very low protein. This stuff that I just got today is probably around 18, so super high protein. Although the horses don't actually do any real work to work off these calories, just staying warm over the winter does require a lot of energy. I did get enough grass hay that I can mix it in because the higher fiber in the grass hay does allow the horses to produce some heat in their hind gut. Sometimes it can be a little tricky getting the combination just right, but I feel pretty confident going into this winter that the horses are going to have everything that they need. I had a few little treats left in my pocket from our vet visit the other day. I am going to be making a video on what we found out about little Gus because it is very interesting. It's not going to have a huge impact on his quality of life, but there are a few things I'm going to change about how I feed him that should help him out.
Sorry, Stewie. Ooh, one more left, Stewie.
Stewie got up from his nap just in time to eat the last treat that I had in my pocket. Even though Whiplash is 20 years old, he does look really good going into the winter. I just want to put a little bit more weight on him in case it is really cold. I was getting some really good shots of these boys when I backed up to get a better view of the mountains when all of a sudden I accidentally stepped in one of these gigantic badger holes. Even though there's only one on the property that I know of, he has been really busy digging up all of the gopher holes. Huckleberry always finds the new holes out in the horse pasture for me to cover up, but for some reason, he doesn't really care too much about the ones that are out in the area that only I walk in. Thankfully, I didn't get hurt, so I'm going to have to pay a little bit more attention while I'm filming around here. Now that I have all of the hay delivered, I'm going to measure my big stack so I can go out and buy the proper tarps. I've tried a lot of different things to cover this hay over the years, but there is a very specific brand of tarp that I like to get.
Tiny. Tiny. Hello, girl. Did you get on the stack?
Tiny will pretty much spend all winter on top of this big giant haystack no matter the weather, so it's important that I get it tarped up nice and tight for her. Since my big stack is flat on the top, I typically put something underneath the tarp to help the water and the snow slide right off. If I don't do this, then the ice will form little puddles on top of the hay and it'll leak through and ruin my entire stack. When I do it this way, it also makes the perfect little tent for Tiny to enjoy on top of the hay. I used shavings for this last year and it seemed to work out pretty good, so I'm going to do the same thing this year. These shavings from the Tractor Supply have actually been making the horses super itchy, so I stopped using them quite a while ago. They should work perfectly for holding up the tarp, and it looks like Tiny also approves.
Careful, girl.
I got 3 different tarps I'm going to use. 2 are 18 feet and then 1 is 24 feet. I have tried using one giant tarp before, but it tends to blow around too much in the wind and then it gets holes in it, so I like being able to take down little bits of tarp as I use the hay throughout the winter. As I was finishing up putting all of the shavings on top, Nigel was insistent that his dinner had not arrived on time. Although it looks fairly late in the day, it's only about 5 o'clock right now. I've been trying really hard to adjust the time I have allocated for chores, but I always seem to be running out of light these days. I haven't checked the weather, but there's a good chance that we'll get some precipitation overnight, so I do want to get all of this covered.
Ziggy! Zig! Careful, Tiny. Tiny! Come on. Okay, be careful, girl. Come on.
After Tiny inspected all of my work thoroughly, I was then ready to place the tarps over the hay. This can be the most treacherous part, so I did text my husband to let him know that I was doing this.
Tiny.
It really wouldn't get done any faster if I had help, but it would be beneficial if I did tumble off this giant pile of hay for someone to call an ambulance if I got hurt. This is what it looks like after I've placed one tarp on top.
Oh, come on.
Before I put the next tarp on, I do have to bungee it down, and Tiny needs to do a final inspection.
Tiny. Come on, Tiny. Come on, Tiny. Hello, Tiny.
With the sun going down, the horses were starting to get a little bit sassy about not having had their dinner yet.
Ziggy! Zig! Careful, Zig!
Ziggy has been getting some
Careful,
special
Ziggo!
meals these days, and it seems like he is getting more and more excited to eat them every day. He has also gotten a lot stronger, so with that comes a little bit of extra energy he needs to burn off every day. I am really starting to lose the light now, so I do have to get this tarp bungeed down before I can't see. I always get a bunch of comments when I use one of these panels as a ladder, but I assure you this is safer than doing it with an actual ladder. This panel has a little bit of a kink in it, and I keep this one just for crawling up on top of the hay. It is a lot more sturdy than a ladder, and it's the perfect height for me to just reach the edge of the tarp so I can get the bungees on them and strap it down. This whole process can be a little bit tricky, but from now on it is basically smooth sailing. Before I made this video, I did actually go back and watch the one from last year. I had some really big plans about how many horses I was going to try and rehab this year, and I did not get to as many as I had hoped. Right after I got my hay last year is when Skeletor started having all of his problems, so that changed my plans quite a bit. I basically just bought Ziggy in the spring, and for the last 6 months he's been in rehab. I do find that the longer I do this, the more I really enjoy keeping the horses for a minimum of 6 months before they move on to their new homes. With Ziggy now having to have a tooth extracted, it will be probably a mandatory 2 more months for that to heal after it's done. So it is very unlikely that Ziggy will go anywhere before next spring or summer if he leaves at all. I have grown super fond of the old guy, and I do think it would be really fun for me to try out some endurance riding next summer. One of the reasons I started this channel was because I was getting a little bit burned out by rehabbing so many horses every year. By putting everything I do on the internet, I was hoping that it would inspire some people to go out and get these horses. I am happy to say that I do receive an email every once in a while saying that they did in fact go out and rescue a horse because of the knowledge that they gained by watching my channel. I, of course, can't save them all, and it helps to have other like-minded people out there doing the same thing that I'm doing. I'm not sure when exactly I'll get the next rehab horse in, but I am feeling really good going into the winter. I have pretty much everything prepared.
Nice job.
One thing that I did want to mention is that all of the hay I got today was paid for by you guys. The little link that I put in a lot of the videos where you can buy a bale of hay for the horses over the last year, that has really added up, and you guys paid for all except maybe 2 bales of my giant stack this year. I cannot tell you guys how much it means to me to have your support and all of this hay put up for the winter. This time of year is typically a little bit tricky for me because it is a huge expense that I have to save up all year for. And with everything going on with all of the horses recently, it was just one less thing for me to worry about. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next video.